The zombie package just got buffed in Marvel Snap, and this feels like the best deck I have played with it since it came out. If you watched my previous 10 good decks to play on day one video, you might have a day's head start on this deck. I think it is a really solid, really interesting build of the zombie package that is aimed primarily at creating confusing point output on the final few turns of the game, and also at using Cosmic Ghost Rider as a sort of pseudo Red Guardian role, where there are too many decks that demand a specific tech answer for you to have all of them in your deck. You can't have Mercury and Mobius and all the other stuff that you need in order to answer this metagame, but you can have a card that can be a combination of Mercury, Mobius, and Enchantress, depending on what things actually end up being on the board. Whether you're blowing up Madam Web, or Warlock, or Iron Man, or Moonstone, this card is good enough to allow you to devote the rest of the deck to being an efficient points package. And it really is an efficient points package. You might look at that Joaquin Torres with several question marks, but honestly, he is quite uniquely powerful when he is multiplying the impact of cards like the Hood, or Merlin spells, or the Hunger. I'm not saying he's a required card per se, but he's a pretty big boost to this deck's point output that I found very surprising in the context of that's Joaquin Torres, nobody plays him. The rest of the deck is a fairly straightforward Werewolf by Night Merlin package. This is definitely a deck where you get a big boost when you draw Merlin. Basically, everything you're doing gets better when you are Merlining, and that is a really notable aspect of this deck's play. If anything, I would describe this deck as playing kind of similar to the Agamotto Annihilus decks, except it doesn't need Agamotto to have this level of point explosion. It gets some of that from Joaquin Torres, the zombie package, and genuinely some really big zombie giant men that come down when you play this list. There is a lot of base power in here. The zombie package itself is quite strong now. Werewolf by Night, we all know how good he is. Merlin and the Hood, a classic combination. And then a bunch of just really good cards to supplement that. Nico Minoru, Surge, Kate Bishop, great cards. They all work with what we're doing. You are just consistently putting points on the board. But honest to God, I think the linchpin of this deck is that it's doing all of its stats with cheap cards, which means that it has enough room to actually play Cosmic Ghost Rider. You don't have to play Mercury. You don't have to play Mercury and Mobius. You don't have to play Mercury and Mobius and Enchantress. You can play a card that's like half of all of those cards combined. And yes, that does mean that in any given matchup, it's probably better to have the individual tech card. But when you add up what this card does across a bunch of matchups, that's when it really starts to shine. I am a big fan of Cosmic Ghost Rider, and I'm a big fan of this deck being able to justify it with such consistent point output from such cheap cards. The Hood has practically been the definition of cheap point output for most of his time in Marvel Snap, and there is no change in that here. Now, notably, it really kind of just is on Merlin to get rid of this guy, and I don't love that, but it also means that additional stress gets placed on the Nico spells that allow you to get rid of this guy. So keep that in mind. It's your spell casters that are going to be cycling this guy away, transforming him into a demon, transforming him into a 2-drop. Those are the situations where you really need to start paying attention. Now, you also need to start paying attention to your board spaces, because since those guys are, like, they exist, but they're not the most reliable options, especially Nico, you do need to make sure that you are prepared to either give up that lane or put a really big thing in that lane. You do have plenty of things that are really big. I want to be super clear about that. You got giant werewolves that can make -3, not even care. A zombie giant man, the Horde itself, really strong stuff. The other thing you want to keep in mind is when you are doing Joaquin Torres stuff with the hood, you're usually looking at a Merlin to get rid of it. When you're looking at a Merlin to get rid of it, make sure that you have something else in the lane with the Joaquin Torres so you don't get rid of your Joaquin Torres as well. I have definitely done several plays of like, there is a hood that goes on the Joaquin Torres, then I play something else there that still has less than 2 power. Like, for example, a Nico that got -1 power. I think that was the situation where this came up. And I then flush both of those away with a Merlin once in future. That stuff shows up a fairly decent amount of the time. But generally speaking, if you're in a position to flush this guy away with a once in future, you're in a good spot regardless. The Hunger's just dece. This is just a very decently solid card. I'm generally pretty happy with a 1/3 that doesn't use board slots, and doubling it with Joaquin Torres is honestly kind of ridiculous. Not using the board slots makes it a much better card to go with Werewolf. That's sort of the natural synergy of this deck, is that there are enough spells in it that go with what we're trying to do already in terms of the Horde stuff. Because Zombie Scarlet Witch got buffed to 3/4, you could play a lot more Merlin spells on her lane much more safely, and that's the biggest thing that this package got. But also, this is just a spell. We're happy to play it with our Joaquin Torres. We're happy to do all of this stuff. The numbers here are quite solid. The queen of utility in Marvel Snap, honestly kind of the one-drop Merlin, just shows up whenever you have the ability to offer her various sacrifices. Whatever you want, she can deliver it. But in every deck she's in, there's like a couple of the ones that you want a lot more than the others. In this deck, there's not nearly so much of a stress on copies, although it can be quite good. For example, copying the Hunger is pretty gross when you get to be able to do that. I've copied a Hunger on a Joaquin Torres before. That's a lot of points. But mostly she's drawing cards and she's getting rid of the hood. Those are the duties that she is on in this list. The rest of the time, she's just a 1/4 mostly. Extremely generic utility card Surge is here to make your already low curve even lower. You're a big fan of on reveals that just provide you snowballing advantage. That's honestly, if you wanted to name this deck something, on reveals that provide you snowballing advantage would probably be a pretty good name. Surge is a good card here. I don't think she's by any means required. You can probably play whatever here, but it's pretty good. Yes, an unironic Joaquin Torres deck. I don't know that Joaquin Torres is required for this deck. I think what he's doing in this deck is providing you some ceiling plays. So there's definitely worlds where you don't need to go out and get Joaquin Torres to play this deck, and you can just play, you know, Mercury here, and it's like probably fine. And I would fully believe that if you told me that. Like, it's like, yeah, I would believe that the card that moves and is also a tech card is pretty good in our Zombie Scarlet Witch deck, and it's fine. I think that Torres is providing some legitimately interesting ceiling plays here, though. Like, the stuff that you're doing with the Hunger, when you can, like, double copy something really cool with a Nico, just pretty interestingly powerful stuff. I will say this is the best I've felt about a Joaquin Torres in my deck in literally ever. I've never felt this good about a Joaquin Torres in my deck. Does that mean that it's the right decision? I won't want to risk your tokens on that, but if you happen to have him lying around, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Just a pretty solid on rate too. Part of what makes this deck succeed is that it is able to get so much power out of so many cheap cards. It is using its top-end Cosmic Ghost Rider as its like catch-all tech, which means all of its cards need to work together to be more than the sum of their parts. And I think Mr. Fantastic is a great example of being more than the sum of his parts here. Like, this is a card that has synergy with the demons from the hood. It has synergy with the transformed cards from Merlin. It is obviously a card that works very well with your cards that are doing Horde things. It is an on reveal, so it works well with Werewolf. Just a whole bunch of different little bits that allow this guy to operate at full capacity and play very above curve as a 2/8 most of the time. Maybe even a 2/10 if you count the Werewolf jump. Kate Bishop is actually, okay, she's obviously good, but when you're doing your strongest stuff, she typically sort of rots in hand. And that's not her fault. It's just that she's very much like your budget Merlin. She's your plan B Merlin. She's there to just give you more things to do with Werewolf when you aren't Merlining and you aren't doing your greatest stuff. And that is a valid and great thing for her to be. But I think when you really are popping off, you will notice that she sits in hand a pretty decent amount. And that is fine. It's just something that you have to eat. Sometimes she is just going to be a shocker with an on reveal on the final turn of the game, and that's really all we can say. Merlin, perhaps the most important card in this deck. Like, I think you could argue for any individual part of the zombie package, Zombie Giant Man, maybe. But Merlin is really the thing that makes this whole deck come together. We talked about all the parts of the Buffalo that Zombie Mr. Fantastic uses. Merlin is sort of the driver of why all of those cards can go in the same deck. Like, you have your Zombie Scarlet Witch, so Merlin's spells are naturally just like additional points when you play them on that lane, right? You have your Hood, so you really want to flush that away. Like, you have all your Werewolf and Werewolf Merlin, very obviously, like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. When you talk about the primary plans in this deck, it's zombies, it's the Hood, it is Werewolf. Merlin is what brings them all together. He's what bridges all of them. And in that context, I think you can understand, like, where Zombie Mr. Fantastic is sort of a beneficiary of all of those plans, Merlin is the driver of those plans. Werewolf by Night is just like a 3, I would guess most games anywhere from 11 to 22, 21, something like that. Like, he's just a really big guy. I think he ends up in the teens a pretty shockingly large amount of the time. And speaking of shockingly large, I mean, that's really all you can say to describe him. He's large, and you never know where he's going to be, so he is shockingly large. The best part of the buff to Zombie Scarlet Witch was the fact that you are better able to put Merlin spells on her lane right now. That's a really big deal, because at 3-2, she just wasn't able to work with a card that genuinely feels like he should be a big part of how this deck is set up. She just didn't work with 2/3 of him. Now you're actually able to reasonably play those spells on this lane because you have a decent amount of things that you're very happy to evolve or to flip back into your deck that are smaller than her. The way Merlin's targeting works means that you are very happy to do that now, where previously you were not. And that is perhaps more than the 2 points, the biggest buff that she's gotten to me. This guy is honestly just huge. I went power for power with this guy versus a Darkhawk deck that Terraxed me, and this guy was bigger. He can get very large, and I think he's exactly what he needs to be right now, which is to say, like, this is a card that is pretty solid, pretty strong, exactly what this deck needs to be in order to justify people playing it. This card needs to be in Darkhawk range to be justifiable, and honest to God, I think this card has finally gotten to that point. I've been waxing poetic about this guy basically the whole time, and I will continue to do so. I think he's basically 50% of a Mobius, 50% of a Mercury, 50% of an Enchantress, which adds up to 150%. I know that's not how math works. Shout out to Scott Steiner, but I do think that that's a pretty accurate analogy to how he plays. He is worse than all of those cards in the matchups that they matter, but he is better than all of those cards in the other matchups, right? When you're playing Mobius and you run into a move deck, he doesn't do anything. When you're playing Cosmic Ghost Rider and you run into a move deck, he does. When you're playing Mercury and you run into Mr. and not Mr. Negative, you run into, like, I don't know, a softer version of the kind of things that this guy can actually deal with. Because notably, he does not deal with Mr. Negative. Remember, I said 50%, not like 90%. But you run into, say, I don't know, a Wong Black Panther deck, or you run into a Sarah deck if you get the right guess on that kind of stuff, or you run into a Warlock deck, or you run into all of this stuff, right? Like, that is where he ends up mattering. He's like half of an Enchantress against the decks that are stacking ongoing lanes. Just all of that kind of stuff is where he shines. I do think he is in every situation worse than running the actual tech card for the matchup. But there are so many different matchups right now, and notably, the 2 matchups where he's really not useful are Hela and Mr. Negative, which are not very popular right now. If that changes, this deck becomes worse, and you have to start really thinking about, like, all right, do I get a Stardust in here? Do I get a Mobius in here? You move a different direction here. For right now, though, I feel like he's as close as I've gotten to a solution to this metagame. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been KMBest. You've been phenomenal. We're going to jump into some gameplay with the list right now. You have a wonderful time making gigantic zombie hordes, and I will see you in the next one. I kind of have to wonder if they're sniping on that. It's that wild.
This hand is so good. Like, I genuinely don't know if I give a shit. Honestly, chill. Like, I'm missing out on some here, but it's kind of chill. Like, Nico mid? No, I want to flush away the Nico. I just don't know what he's playing, which is fucking with me. I'm gonna snap anyway. Does the next card also get turned into a Nico demon? Anybody know? No? Okay. So it is the hunger here. Something like that. I think this does it, but I can't be sure. 18, 14, and then this plays for 20 something. Yeah, we should be good. Yeah. Yeah. That's a 22 power zombie giant cubes each. Maybe I wouldn't have even thrown there. Who can say?
Wakanda forever!
I mean, like, it's a Zola, right?
Snap!
I lose? Okay. Well, it wasn't a Zola.
Victory!
I mean, that's what I was afraid of too. Luckily, you know, it was chill. Pokemon 1-3, dog. Boy. Bang. Yeah. They can't retreat. Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to figure out what the actual play here is. snap from here.
Snap. I see the way.
Oh, do I fucking lose, or is it a tiebreaker? A tiebreaker that I win? No, I just win. Unless Sakar fucks me. Didn't fuck me. Thanks, Sakar. Thanks, Sakar.
Victory.
They shouldn't have stayed, but they got their 25%er off something that should never have happened in the first place. All right, I mean, I guess you're a Mockingbird deck. This doesn't work, right? Like it's one cost. A shame. Nice. We'll see. I think we maybe get there. 13, and then we go to like 15, and then we get big guy, and we win, even if that's the real Mysterio. Cool.
Victory.
Gates and some shit like that, right? Like they got some shit going. But I just don't know that it's going enough. E. Ross. My God. Is that playable without Joaquin? Yeah, probably. Not much. Woo! No Warlock Activator! Love that for me. All right, so what's the method here? We're worried about She-Hulk at 20, Taskmaster somewhere else. Correct? I think this beats it. It's a 6, goes to 8, goes to 10. It should beat it. The worry is if they're not doing that, then I kind of get got, I think. Like if they're just doing some cards everywhere, right? Well, okay, we should be good, barring utter catastrophe. We did not get hit by utter catastrophe. It was not an utter catastrophe. Destroyer not 18 power. Good point. We won a game where they got 18 power. Excellent point. I totally forgot they did that. So true, bestie. So true. Ah! He plays Killmonger, so I gotta be a little bit afraid of some shit. Yeah, I know it's Tucker. It's why I'm not snapping. There's the Killmonger. Right. Get the shuffle in, then polymorph it. Nice. Nice Red Guardian. I wonder what his play is here. I think this is the best I've got.
Power must be controlled.
No, he can't win the left, so it's just like we don't invest Hellion, maybe Eliath, depending on if they're playing it. Bobby. Does this copy the hunger the way I want it to? Does anybody know if this actually works or does it not work? It does? Okay. This seems super messed up.
Snap.
I mean, how much do I feel like I even need to do this shit? They snap me back.
All systems go.
How do I win this fucking game? Oh, I forgot to activate! No!
Power must be controlled.
Oh my god. Okay, the good news is actually, but we are fucking dead. We are fucking dead. I forgot to activate. The activate doesn't make a difference, I suppose. Wait! Whoa! Fuck! I did it!